On this Thursday night, keeping the door open to diplomacy in the Middle East.
Iran can and should make a deal.
When President Trump could decide whether to join Israel's war against Iran. The Iranian missiles that hit an Israeli hospital. And what could happen next inside Iran. Tariff timeline, what could happen next month if Canada doesn't resolve its trade war with the U.S. Spreading their wings. What the Competition Bureau says needs to happen to Canada's airline industry to benefit travelers. Plus, some positive news. The Bear finally shedding this burden after 2 years.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. As Israel and Iran keep up their airstrikes on each other, the U.S. president is suggesting there is still time for a diplomatic solution. President Donald Trump has been weighing whether to join Israel in attacking Iran, claiming without hard evidence that Iran is close to producing a nuclear weapon. Today, the White House said Washington and Tehran are still in contact, and the press secretary delivered a message from President Trump.
Based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks.
No sign of diplomacy yet. One of the Iranian missiles hit an Israeli hospital today, and after that, Israel's defense minister vowed to step up attacks. Iran's supreme leader, he says, can no longer be allowed to exist. Mike Armstrong is in Jerusalem. Mike.
Well, Donna, a lot of people in this country went to bed last night with a missile barrage and woke up this morning to another. Missiles were fired at targets over a wide area at about 7 a.m. There were sirens over much of the country, followed by the increasingly familiar thuds of Israel's Iron Dome. Now, Israeli defenses did intercept multiple missiles. This is the remnants of one that landed in the West Bank. But on this day, multiple missiles made it through. Israel's press office is asking foreign media not to identify locations. We can say this is the aftermath of an explosion south of Tel Aviv, and this was the aftermath of one east of the city center. A high-rise was hit.
We heard the boom. The boom was like from 1 to 100, it was 100.
Israeli officials say more than 270 people were admitted to hospital Thursday alone. That number is being called a miracle by some. Not only were 2 densely populated neighborhoods hit, but another missile in the same wave appears to have made a direct hit on a hospital. Officials at the facility, about 70 kilometers southwest of Jerusalem, say there is major damage and more than 70 were injured, but that it could have been worse.
This specific building, because it's an older building, was evacuated by us in the past few days, and the department that was directly hit was empty.
Iran's foreign minister posted on social media that the hospital wasn't the target. In fact, he says it wasn't hit. It was damaged as missiles, he says, destroyed military and intelligence targets nearby. There are also accounts on social media spreading reports, complete with computer graphics, that Israel operates a military base under the hospital.
It's shocking.
Something Israel Defense Forces deny.
I'm sorry, I know it's supposed to be, I'm trying not to laugh. It's crazy to say that.
Israeli officials are drawing a distinction with hospitals targeted in Gaza, insisting those were used by Hamas.
They're targeting civilians because they're a criminal regime. They're the arch-terrorists of the world.
Israel's defense minister is calling the hospital attack cowardly and a war crime and says he's told his forces to increase the intensity of their attacks on targets in Iran. Donna?
Mike Armstrong in Jerusalem. Thanks, Mike. It has been a week since Iran launched preemptive strikes against Israel, a surprise assault that knocked out many of Iran's air defenses and killed top military commanders and nuclear scientists. Israel claims Iran's nuclear program is the main target, even though the International Atomic Energy Agency says there is no proof Iran poses an imminent threat. Today, a senior Iranian general claimed all of its enriched nuclear material has been moved to what he calls a safe site.
A research reactor site in western Iran, the latest Israeli strike against the country's nuclear facilities. Some of those who can flee the bombings are going to countries like Armenia. This couple from Vancouver was in Iran to get married. They say they will go back when it's possible. But with both sides talking retaliation and Washington mulling involvement, there is no end in sight.
If you want to hit the Islamic Republic, you better have a plan to begin with. You better have an end game. And I don't see that. That's the problem.
This Iranian analyst says Friday's proposed meeting between Iran's foreign minister and 3 European counterparts is unlikely to have much effect.
Buying time, not really from Israel, but making effort to do something with the US potentially. Basically, it will prolong the war.
One of the Iranian regime's biggest allies, Russia, has warned the US not to directly join the conflict. But Russian President Vladimir Putin is showing little sign of doing the same for Iran.
Maybe 20% of the Israeli population also has Russian citizenship. Lots of the oligarchs around Putin are Jewish, Israeli nationals.
Experts say Israel's hopes of weakening Ayatollah Khamenei are not helped by the airstrikes. Far from it.
A lot of deaths among women and children. Clearly, that's not the way to strengthen calls for regime change.
And what such a change would even look like is far from certain. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
With the airspace closed over Israel and Iran, the federal government says it is willing to help Canadians who want to leave the region. Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand says the government is planning commercial options for Canadians in Israel, the West Bank and Iran, but they have to get to Jordan, Turkey or Armenia first. Then she says there will be consular services available for them. Canadians in the region are strongly encouraged to register with Global Affairs Canada. A little later, we'll hear from some Canadians desperate to contact friends and family in Iran. We have some breaking news from Alberta. One hiker has died and several have been injured in a rockslide in Banff National Park. This is where it happened this afternoon at Bow Falls Trail near Bow Glacier Falls. That's about 100 kilometers north of the town of Banff along the Icefields Parkway. There are no pictures of the actual slide yet. RCMP say multiple hikers were caught in it. Some highway closures are expected as emergency crews respond. Skylar Peters is in Banff tonight.
We still don't know the severity of how many people may have been involved, if any are trapped under this rock slide, or the severity of the injuries to those affected. We do understand many of the injured are being flown by Stars Air Ambulance to area hospitals throughout the Bow Valley, including this one here in Banff. Physicians currently on standby being prepared to treat multiple hikers. First responders from several agencies, including RCMP, local fire and EMS, and emergency teams with both Banff and Jasper National Parks were called to the site at about 1:30 p.m. local time. The trail affected is a 9-kilometer long out and back trail considered moderate in intensity, located roughly 40 kilometers east of Lake Louise along Highway 93, the Icefields Parkway. That's a road that's expected to be closed intermittently to allow first responders to continue their work. Skylar Peters, Global News.
President Donald Trump's trade war is still on. American tariffs on steel and aluminum remain a thorn in the side of Canada's economy. Today, Prime Minister Mark Carney tried reassuring Canadian manufacturers he has a plan to help them as he tries to reach a new trade deal with the president. Mackenzie Gray reports.
The Prime Minister putting himself on the clock to solve his most pressing political challenge.
Seeing progress that's been made, President Trump and I agreed to pursue negotiations towards a deal within the coming 30 days.
But if Trump and Carney can't cut a security and economic agreement by the July 21st deadline, the Prime Minister now says he's willing to increase tariffs on the U.S.
Canada will adjust its existing counter-tariffs on U.S. steel and aluminum products on the 21st of July.
On June 4th, the Trump administration increased steel and aluminum tariffs to 50%, but that move didn't get Carney's elbows up. He kept Canadian tariffs at 25%, hoping to get a breakthrough at the negotiating table, a move the Premier of Ontario supports.
If the president comes and says we're putting 10% across the board, well, we need to put 10% across the board. and make sure that we protect our manufacturers here.
With reliable partners.
Carney attempting to give those protections by promising federal contracts can only go to suppliers from Canada and from reliable trading partners. But both the Prime Minister's office and the Finance Department couldn't say who those partners are and if the U.S. is included. Something Unifor, Canada's largest private sector union, criticized for lacking specific detail.
Steel industries and our workers.
The Prime Minister also implementing new quotas on foreign steel that could be dumped into Canada, a long-standing American irritant.
We must reinforce our strength at home and safeguard Canadian workers and businesses from the unjust U.S. tariffs.
The response from industry has been split, Donna, with the Aluminum Association saying the announcement strikes the right balance, but the Steel Producers and Steel Workers Union say it falls short of what their industry needs.
Okay, Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa, thanks. There's a little more information tonight from police about how that 3-year-old Quebec girl who was missing for 3 days was found. The child, who police have asked the media not to identify, was spotted yesterday afternoon. Dan Spector explains what more we know.
Police say she spent more than 3 days and nights alone in the heat and humidity beside Highway 417 in eastern Ontario after being left there with no food and no water.
She's in the ditch. She was lying in the ditch.
Captain Benoit Richard says the 3-year-old Montreal girl was spotted by an Ontario Provincial Police drone lying in tall grass that would have made her hard to spot from the road. Officers then rushed to her.
She put her hands up and she was talking with the officers.
Richard says OPP officers quickly gave her mangoes and Gatorade. Small children are particularly susceptible to heat stroke and dehydration.
Not having water for 3 days can be critical and can be lethal.
On Sunday, the 3-year-old was last seen around 9:45 a.m. with her mother and pet chihuahua in Montreal near their home. Almost 6 hours later, her mother reported her missing 50 kilometers west in Coteau-du-Lac. Monday, the dog was discovered dead on the side of a highway. The girl's mother was arrested and charged with child abandonment. On Wednesday, police announced new information. The pair had been seen Sunday afternoon by an Eastern Ontario farmer. Investigators narrowed their search and the girl was found along a highway at 2 p.m. in a rural area of Ontario about 150 kilometers west of Montreal. Dr. Nafisa Ismail says at 3 years old, the girl will have the capacity to remember what happened.
How impactful that's going to be on her physical health, on her mental health, will depend on the environment that she finds herself in going forward.
The girl remains in hospital surrounded by family where she's doing well and has been sleeping a lot. Dan Spector, Global News, Montreal.
There is still no sign of 2 other young children who have been missing in Nova Scotia for nearly 7 weeks. Today, the province announced a reward of up to $150,000 for information about the Sullivan siblings. 6-year-old Lily and her 4-year-old brother Jack were reported missing from their home in Pictou County on May 2nd. Extensive searches have taken place in the heavily wooded area around the property. Canada Post says it's reached an agreement with its second largest union. The Crown Corporation says the new contract covers 8,500 employees who mostly manage post offices in rural Canada. The agreement includes an 11% wage increase over 3 years. Canada Post is still trying to settle a contract with its largest union, the Canadian Union of Postal Workers. It represents about 55,000 workers. The sky's the limit coming up. How the federal government is being urged to increase competition in Canada's airline industry. There goes another SpaceX rocket. The unmanned rocket exploded during a routine test flight in Texas Wednesday night, sending a giant fireball into the sky. Local authorities are calling it a catastrophic failure. SpaceX, owned by Elon Musk, calls what happened to Starship 36 a major anomaly. It is the 4th loss of a SpaceX rocket this year. Canada's Competition Bureau is urging the federal government to allow foreign ownership of domestic-only airlines to try to spur competition in the highly concentrated industry. Ann Gaviola has more on how that could help bring down flight costs in an industry commanded by Air Canada and WestJet.
What we heard from Canadians is a desire for more choice, better prices, and more services, including the number of flights.
The Competition Bureau's solution, no surprise, more competition in a market dominated by the big two. Air Canada and WestJet together account for roughly half to three-quarters of all domestic passenger traffic at Canada's busiest airports. An improving trend, market concentration has gone down by 10% between 2019 and 2023, reflecting the growing presence of Porter and Flair. Among the Bureau's recommendations, raising the cap on foreign ownership of carriers that only fly within Canada from the current 49% to 100% ownership. This could create a new entrant with deep-pocketed backers.
Introducing just one more carrier can lead to meaningful results, a 9% reduction in price on average.
But not everyone's convinced this would make a big difference.
Looking at the long history we've seen of the airline industry over the last 30, 40 years, it's been problematic to get beyond a couple of big players.
Lynx Air, a recent example of a smaller carrier that tried and failed. It's not clear if there's a business case in this geographically vast country with a small population.
How would foreigners make money from it? Because if you're not making money, it's not an attractive place to invest in.
A new carrier could be a game changer in underserved and remote communities, but major urban centres are already running close to capacity.
Montreal, Toronto's, Vancouver's of our country don't even have enough slots to add a lot of competition.
Flair Airlines tells Global News now it's time for action. The government must begin implementing the report's most impactful recommendations without delay. Now it's up to lawmakers to decide if these suggestions come to fruition. Donna?
Anne Gaviole in Toronto. Thanks, Anne. Mexico took a direct hit today from Hurricane Eric. The Category 3 storm made landfall in the western part of Oaxaca state. Strong winds and heavy rains triggered flash flooding, destroyed restaurants, and stranded dozens of fishing boats. The storm is now losing steam as it tracks across Mexico's mountains and should dissipate tomorrow. And this black bear in Michigan has finally been freed from its uncomfortable collar. It was first spotted with a plastic lid around its neck in 2023. The bear remained elusive, though, only occasionally being spotted on trail cameras. Biologists were finally able to track it down earlier this month. They sedated it and managed to cut off that plastic lid and then released the bear back into the wild. The threats against Jagmeet Singh's life ahead. His brother speaks out on the toll they took on the former NDP leader. There's new insight into how threats against Sikhs in Canada affected the former federal leader of the NDP. Nearly 2 years ago, Jagmeet Singh was put under heavy RCMP security because of warnings an alleged agent of the Indian government was spying on him. Now, Singh's brother is speaking about the toll that took, both politically and personally. Taria Isri reports.
In December 2023, Jagmeet Singh and his wife welcomed their second daughter. Not pictured. The team outside the room keeping close watch.
His daughter was born in a hospital, swarming with RCMP and security services.
Shortly before her birth, the former NDP leader received a warning his life was in danger.
They didn't specify the source, but the intimation was that it was a foreign threat.
Last week, Global News reported a suspected agent of the Indian government with alleged ties to the Lawrence Bishnoi gang was watching Singh's every move. Canadian authorities accuse New Delhi of using that same crime group to commit violence in Canada and silence its political opponents. Allegations India denies.
The level of security that my brothers provided could only be in response to an organized, targeted attack.
Constant security and a climate of fear that likely interfered with his ability to perform political duties and even see his family.
I had to give details about who I am before seeing my own brother.
No biking to Parliament Hill, less time outside with his kids.
Let's win this!
Back then, Singh considered stepping down.
He's very resilient. But when it came to the fact that his loved ones and those around him, his kids, his wife, could also be a threat, that's when I really saw the impact upon him.
And we're going to continue to fight for Canada.
The former NDP leader is now out of politics. But for his family, Prime Minister Mark Carney's invitation to India's Narendra Modi is adding insult to injury.
The Indian government has targeted the then leader of a federal national party in Canada. Where is the red line? When is enough is enough?
Taria Isri, Global News, Montreal.
Next, Iranians in Canada anxiously watching and waiting for news on their loved ones half a world away. Israel's attack on Iran is reverberating across the world, including on people who fled the regime in Iran and now live in Canada. For them, friends and family are top of mind as they watch the two countries attack each other. Heather Yourex-West spoke with 3 families about their hopes and fears.
Unable to speak with her family in Iran, Rose Garamsar can only watch over their photos and pray.
I have 3 aunts and an uncle who are currently in Tehran. On my husband's side, he has his mother and his brother who are in Tehran.
It's been 2 days since a near total internet blackout by Iran's government made communication impossible, though the family believes their loved ones are safe right now.
I just received a message from my family that they're safe. They're out of Tehran right now and they're in a safe place.
For how long, no one knows. To this family, Israel's aggression is unjustified. Their wish is for de-escalation and a return to life as it was.
I don't claim to speak for all Iranian people, but for me as a person who's experienced war, I believe that, this is something that the world doesn't need.
But others within Canada's Iranian community feel differently.
Once and for all, this regime needs to go. So we will accept everything that is coming at us in order to ensure that this government goes.
Ghazal Kalarbig and Ekbal Qaidin also worry about family and friends in Iran right now, but believe the current authoritarian regime is a threat to their safety as well, pointing to the 2022 killing of Mahsa Amini, the young woman who died in hospital after Iran's morality police arrested her for violating the country's strict dress codes for women. Her death sparked protests around the world.
But we don't like the civilian being hurt. Nobody wants a war. We don't want a war.
Though as the violence escalates, avoiding all-out war feels less assured by the day. Heather Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
That is Global National for this Thursday. I'm Donna Friesen. Jeff Semple will be here at the Anchor Desk tomorrow. And tonight, we'll leave you with a tribute to Jeff. Tomorrow is his first day back after the birth of his daughter. And it will be his first day back since winning the Canadian Screen Award as Canada's Best National Reporter. He won for his coverage of the aftermath of the October 7th attack on Israel. So double congratulations to you, Jeff. He will see you tomorrow, and I will see you again next week. Bye-bye.